Welcome back, Visions fans. This is episode 5 of the Leonis report, back here with JB79 after another awesome week in the game. JB, welcome. How's things going so far?
It's going great. It's been a busy week. Obviously, a lot of new units. It's kind of the what I've been calling the unit parade, or 100 cost parade anyway. And that is in full swing. And we're getting a couple surprises here too, which is interesting for Global Fest. And yeah, it's exciting time to be playing. A lot to do.
Definitely. This was a busy week. There's a lot of people, even myself, that were like, oh no, like I'll pass, I'll wait. I'm not that excited. Like a day or two goes by and you're just like, oh no, okay. I'm pulling Hyoh, and even Resol, I like made pulls I didn't think I was gonna. It's yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, so so that was what happened to me. I made my whole video and I'm like, oh, this is the first unit I'm gonna skip in forever, and then
Same.
I can't help myself. It's a problem.
It's a problem. The game's
Yeah,
got us.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
but either way, things are good. Life's good. So happy to talk about things. So yeah, we're gonna kick things off here. Battlegrounds of Ardra. Again, this first section here is where we talk about some general PvP things and content of what's coming. A little bit about vision card equipment reviews and impressions. More about the nitty gritty of some of the stats and our impressions of those things. And kicking the first thing off here is the new map that we got for Guild Wars this week, which is the Castle Interior 1. How do you feel about this map so far? Any fun thoughts?
It's a cool map. I remember this. I remember this map fondly from very early on in class match, where it was actually we had it a couple of times back in like the Agrius Kilf days. And it's a very small map, right? It's just
Yep.
11 wide and then 13 length. And you kind of start in an aggressive position, like very very close to one another, so that it definitely suits itself for speed. You're going to be likely within the enemy's range. After you kind of do your initial buff. Depending on how you have things set up, and you can try to take advantage of that, or try to abuse that with CT mechanics or quicken or
Definitely.
haste, or things like that. So always these smaller kind of more confined maps, they're always more conducive to that the agility and speed factors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know Lemuray is a popular choice that you're talking about, like haste and quicken and whatnot. Keenblade obviously comes to mind too when people talk about CT manipulation. And you're right,
Yeah.
these small maps, the worst thing you want to do is potentially get baited by an enemy. And obviously, you get into those situations where you have to be fast enough to get your initial turn order and buffs off, as you mentioned, because if not, characters can bait you pretty easily. Characters that have that move of 4, move of 5, and you really have to make those snap decisions whether you just go one buff or two buffs and which characters you use at all. Some characters are simply very slow that they end up getting lapped as the fight goes on because of those haste and quicken and keen blade things. So, not either way, good map. It'd be good to see it shake up a little bit soon. I know there is some redundancy with dark and fire, but at least where we are. But we are seeing more elements start to come out to play now. Everyone's getting really used to how to hard counter dark or hard counter even fire evade to a certain extent, and people are finally starting to shake things up.
Yeah, we actually today are fighting a lightning Skahal wall. He does pretty well against even fire, just because of that stupid toad ability.
Yep.
It's so
Well,
infuriating.
if you have the staff mage sub job, a lot of people are smartly putting on the staff mage, and
Yeah, energy buster. Yep.
yeah, they're getting that 100% hit rate. Yep, definitely. And then even to that point, I know when I was building some of my teams, when you think of the fire meta and the dark meta, they're primarily physical damage dealers, like by and large. Obviously, Halloween Lucia had some exceptions, but on that note, you can really catch some people off guard throwing Skahal in there, where all of a sudden, like, you have not prepped at all for a magic team, and Skahal just comes in there and evaporates you.
He's so overpowered.
It's great. I mean, it's not
Yeah,
great, but it's
it's fun
yeah,
when
yeah.
you're the one using him.
Exactly. So good.
Yep.
So then we also have Trials of Reckoning coming up here too. Obviously, PVE content we haven't had in quite some time. Obviously, those are a little more few and far between. Is coming with a very cool accessory. And just a reminder for those that haven't seen it, it's the Moogle Cloak. It is 5% elemental resistance to Sephiroth and Yuffie, also giving them 10 AoE resistance. Outside of that, it's more acquired AP and crit evasion, so they're good metrics, but kind of common on some other pieces of equipment. Has an evade stat on it. Yeah, it should be obviously an excellent accessory for Sephiroth and Yuffie in particular, just being that evade unit. But Sephiroth certainly wouldn't mind the AoE resistance and element resist either. What are your plans for
Yeah,
the Trials Reckoning?
this one, I think I actually like it for Sephiroth even more than for Yuffie. I mean, 10 AoE resistant, that's not a stat that he can get in an armor slot, being a cloth wearer. So that's really, really nice. And then obviously he's got the all element resistance. And this is just another way he can get more, if you weren't using an Alex ring. And then crit evasion is it's an underrated stat, and then the acquired AP. So all around the board, I think that I'm probably going to make a shield version of this eventually, and maybe as a secondary, I might make an evade version. But definitely, like if I could only make one, I think I would go shield for Sephiroth.
Interesting. Interesting. I,
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I would probably lean Yuffie myself, but you're right. There are more substitutes for this for an evade unit than there are substitutes for Sephiroth to get those same attributes. So in terms of efficiency, you're right. But I'll likely go for, I would say, 2 of these at minimum, 1 of each. Trials of Reckoning is a little more systematic at this point, where it is a little easier to grind. Obviously, the overnight
Yeah.
farming helps a ton. The overnight, just getting those tickets. Yeah, if you can, obviously grab 1 of each.
I know that I had heard at one point that they were adding the boss battles to the background farming as well. I don't know if that's going to be implemented for this one or if we have to wait to the next one. But yeah, if you hit the farming hard, it should be no problem to farm up a couple of these. And I think that they will probably start showing up in the Chocobo missions also this
Ooh,
week. So
good call on that. Yeah, no, I'm excited. It's been a while since Trial of Reckoning. We'll obviously see what happens IRL if I have the time to dedicate toward it properly. But it's nice to get this kind of content and be able to min max. I know you and I have both kind of soured our opinion a little bit on it because there are some cheese tactics that people use to generate high scores. Commonly, like reducing your bravery to a much lower level to increase the chains, and that's kind of okay from a creativity perspective. I always like enjoy seeing that where someone posts that video and I like have the light bulb go off and I'm like, oh shoot, that's a really creative idea. But at the same time, like not really fun from the perspective of trying to compete
yeah.
with that.
So it gets a little bit. I'm okay, lowering bravery, lowering faith. Those are things that we can freely do within the game with items or abilities in the barracks and whatnot. But when it comes to using like level 1 abilities, for example, just to completely lower your damage so that you're able to ramp up chains and things, or even like farming some slave account where you're just building up a gimped Tifa essentially that has level 1 abilities, has like none of her board taken, just so that she can pull off more chains. That
Right.
is where it just enters in complete cheese, and it's not really about the tactics at that point. So that's one of the things that's soured on it for me. The other thing is that I'm a little disappointed with Gumi, where the 2 XL bonuses this week for vision cards are both brand new cards this week that you
Yeah.
have to pull. There, if I read the notices right, it's only a 1 week trial. So
Oh, that changes. Yeah.
I mean, you have to immediately go grab those cards, and yeah, I'm not too fond of that development either.
No,
I
totally.
like it when trials is 2 weeks and you kind of have a little bit more time to think about the strategies and put together the teams and things like that. So
Absolutely. Well, even just from, like I said, IRL aside, not everyone has those days to dedicate the
yeah,
testing that you need. And if you're procrastinating in your hard stages, you can only get 3 attempts at both of those. You like to have some extra time if possible. But yeah, at the very least, I'm glad Hyoh is not an XL unit. That was one that I know people were kind of concerned about. And he's a lot
hmm
harder to build up quickly for many people as opposed to a vision card. But yeah, you're right. The
yeah.
vision cards, you got a couple days and then that's it. We do have some balance changes here to the game as well. We did introduce a couple upgrades here to certain jobs. In particular, it's the Dual Gunner, Assassin, and Trick Lancer. I know we're kind of coming to the end of some of these job upgrades. These are 2 that are, or at least 2 of the 3 are probably a little on the less frequently seen side. I know Dual Gunner and Assassin. Oh, Dual Gunner is pretty popular, but Assassin probably less so, and Trick Lancer has seen an increase recently. But yeah, I know we can go through these, talk about them a little bit. I know you were kind of high on Trick Lancer if you want to start there.
Yeah, so in terms of Trick Lancer, it's getting a little bit better AP management, particularly on Binding Javelin. And the cost of that skill is going down just a little bit, gets it down to 22, which I like. The All-Out Assault buff, that one, it's right today. I think it's only giving you like 40% attack or something like that, and that's going to add in that critical rate. So the Trick Lancer job in general is one that kind of focuses on critting, and usually the units that have it, you generally have high dex and high crits. So
Right.
that sort of works out pretty well for the job. So Masterful Melody, that one is getting a missile tech resistance buff. Today it's 15%. It's going up to 25%. McLeod actually, since he already has kind of an upgraded version, his goes to 45%, which is pretty substantial.
Insane.
I mean, I know there's a lot of penetration for missile in the game now, but I mean, 45 is that's super high.
Yeah. Actually, just on that note, I think the missile res pen is slightly less prevalent than it was a month or 2 ago, where that was really the Ice Girls, primarily Eliza and Elia, who had a bunch of it, not only just innately, but in the vision card, but to some of these sub jobs that characters use that have like missile access. That's a
Yeah.
that's a pretty sizable buff because they don't have that same innate penetration. So I mean I don't love the buff, like it's a good one. But yeah, penetration wise though, this is still does well against that.
Yes, I mean, so I don't think there's anything crazy here, but obviously, Luartha Winter, she gets an AP restore there on her job 25, so that's kind of cool too. But I mean, Trick Lancers, it's one of the more recent jobs. I think it's probably one of the better jobs that we saw come out recently too. So I think any sort of upgrades here, I think are appreciated.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. And I know the other two are kind of a little older in terms of jobs. Dual Gunner and Assassin are two of the OGs. Not a lot of assassin units in the game. They're typically the sub jobs. Dual Gunners, that can be a popular sub job in a couple units, but I know some of the ones, or at least one character that came to mind that you'd mentioned that we would talk about was Venera, who is also this week getting her Dream upgrade as well. It is interesting to look at these buffs on two of the jobs in addition to that and just seeing if that changes her at all. I know the Dual Gunner one does get some of that missile piercing, which I just talked about going away, but apparently they're still on the buff. Quad
So
shot.
I think that one is like 20%, and it gets in there, and then it gets 20% defense piercing as well that it already had.
It's awesome.
So
Extra ability too. 3 uses instead of 2.
Decent buff, yeah.
Yep. Quad shot, obviously one of the most famous abilities for the 4 hit, but also deals extra accuracy bonus to it as well. That one certainly helps. A lot of these units are high dex units, which at this point that means more crit rate than it does accuracy, but that certainly does help as well. The rest of it's really more just about, looks like AP consumption management, which is good because those units do sometimes struggle with AP consumption. They historically had to like buff a handful of times to kind of generate the AP to kind of sustain that damage uptime, and seeing these AP values brought down is pretty substantial. 32 to 28 and 40 to 32. And even a couple of them here, like Rapid Fire, is getting a height adjustment too. So overall, it seems like some good versatility pieces for them to just use the job more fluidly.
Yeah, one thing that I thought was kind of interesting was that dual trigger upgrade. It gets a lower CT by 20 essentially on that one, so that's kind of cool.
Yep.
And then I think they gave just a little bit to like the range and range heights to the job as well. So definitely helpful, I think, for those older units like Lucia. I think she gets an extra range and available to her in the passive. But overall, like you said, these are older jobs. I don't think they're not going to be like kind of changing anything overnight. But definitely some quality of life, and some of the skills are getting just a little bit better. So
Yeah. Definitely. The assassin one here, which is kind of transitioning, Armor Cleaver is getting a pretty interesting adjustment here where the range of it is going from cross to square. It's getting an additional use, and it raises luck for 3 turns, which is very cool because there's a handful of these characters that are assassins that are evade style units. So getting that buff to luck actually could be sizable. I don't think it's, again, a character changing thing, but that is a very, very nice mid-fight buff where typically if you're getting, let's say, like evasion buffs, it's in your first buff or two. But this is an actual ability. So even if a buff wears off halfway through the battle, use Armor Cleaver, you get to, not regenerate, but reclaim some of that lost evasion with this. It's a nice way to keep that evasion uptime.
yeah, so that one's I think it's a 20% luck buff.
Nice. That's
So,
big.
yeah.
That's big. Heavenly Blade is reducing enemy ability reaction time, which is fine, but I know Heavenly Blade is not necessarily a very popular auto PvP ability. Condemning Blade is getting a guaranteed hit on it. Also a chance to inflict doom that was there already, but this is kind of cool now where you might use this ability more often just because it does have a 100% hit chance. And I've always liked that concept too, where like if you can't kill an evade unit, just like throw doom on them and just hopefully you survive long enough, right? Like let them kill themselves. Yeah.
Kind of wait it out for 4 turns.
Yeah. And then Venera in particular is getting an ability here too, where her Blood Pact, which is her 120 ability, which actually was a good ability when they first introduced it to her. It had recovered AP and increases her unit resistance, but this one now just bestows a barrier on herself that's a physical barrier, so kind of helping that survivability overall. Again, there's a lot of barrier break in the game, so maybe not game-changing, but against some of those teams that don't have it, it's a nice quality life buff for her for that survivability.
Yeah, so that one is going to be a 50% physical barrier.
Nice.
To go along with the 25 single target resistance.
Overall, thumbs up. I just don't know if it's going to change anything, particularly from a dark perspective.
Yeah, I think, I mean, Assassin, I think even despite these upgrades, it's still like a really rough job. Like the range in general is super low. And I think kind of the original idea behind the job was, because Venera had such good mobility and such good evasion there that she could kind of get behind her opponents. And some of the skills are kind of, give you bonuses when you attack from behind, which is kind of cool in theory, but at least from an auto perspective, it just doesn't really end up working out all that well.
Definitely.
And then even like some of like the range heights on the skills are pretty tough too.
Yeah, I would agree. Either way, like to see them. I'm certainly always welcoming for them, giving some balance upgrades. And for those of you that do use her, hopefully take advantage of those kind of buffs. But we also, on that note of buffs, we have +6 equipment coming as well. I know it's been, I think, a couple of weeks there where it kind of slowed down for a bit. And the +6 is for the Shinra Bangle, which is the old Trial of Reckoning equipment from Final Fantasy VII. The Spine Blade, which is kind of thought of with Duane, where that was kind of his primary weapon when he was released. And so obviously the timing of that, probably not coincidental. And then the Gold Anklet as well. All three of them are getting their +6s. And I know you and I were talking ahead of time. Just lumping them together, I know we're not relatively impressed with many of these +6s.
I'm not a huge fan of the Shinra Bangle. I think the original niche of that item was, I think, the mainly around the defense penetration.
Right.
And there's just better items for it now. It stays at that 10 value. So I think especially for like a UR accessory, it's kind of underwhelming. I mean, it's you get like some substantial crit damage there, but
yeah,
it's kind of whatever.
Yeah, this
depends
to me,
on the unit.
Yeah, even then, if you're, I don't know, crit rate of 10 is what the new buff is. Like, that's not a big enough passive for me to save on. Some of these passives are like, oh man, that's great, I don't have to worry about rolling that anymore. That one's just not one that I think is all that strong. And honestly, the same's kind of true for the other ones here. So Spine Blade is maintaining its 20 defense pen that it always had. It's getting accuracy of 10 though, and the main stats, there's accuracy on it on the builds. It is going from 14 to 20. So overall, a net accuracy buff of 16. It's honestly not necessarily that bad, but from a weapon perspective, I feel like it's one of those things where it comes down to, if you're gearing for accuracy, you just go for the Alex ring and call it a day. There's very few instances where I think you really go for like an aim build, particularly because a lot of these characters that wield this blade probably need more accuracy than that. I'm thinking of Duane in particular. Like 16 accuracy is not really going to help him compete with the modern, anything in terms of evasion. It's really more of like a power creep adjustment. So it's okay, but yeah.
Well, this is one of those weird items that like it has the same accuracy amount for all three versions. It's like 20 for the vital, the attack, and the magic. So it's like, why does the vital even exist? Like,
that's a question for anything. Why do any vital? Dude, I don't think I own, even from a Drain Force meme cheese build, I don't think I own a single vital piece of equipment. Like, just I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
I think I made a plat robe vital for Catone.
That actually might be the only one, and even then, I don't think I've ever used it. And then yeah, finally the Golden Anklet. That's not even getting anything for an ability perspective. It's simply just a stat increase from, essentially, if you're building it for the Spirit, which you most likely are, it's going from 12 Spirit to 17 Spirit. So
it gets actually kind of a sneaky upgrade there with the ability, the 8% agility. It goes from 2 turns to 3 turns. So that's kind of it's pretty minor.
That's better than I thought. It's not good. I'll give him a thumbs up though. That is a helpful enough.
Yeah, buff, it's like an agility tuning kind of item. I don't think you would. I mean, potentially if you wanted that agility for just an extra turn and then for it to fall away, I guess you could +6 it, but I probably won't make one of these anytime soon.
I don't think I would either. No. But no, that's really what we got for the job upgrades, the equipment. Again, it's nice, but nothing we're really excited about, but still worth covering just to kind of, keep on top of what is changing. But yeah, that's essentially all we had for the Battlegrounds of Arja. It's kind of reviewing all the balance-related changes, which can now kind of get us into more of a fun theory crafting segment. This is now, this is the War Room, where now we get to talk a little more about like unit reviews and meta formations. I know we primarily wanted to focus on Hyoh and Duane, where obviously Hyoh, there's like a lot of information this week and feedback and whatnot. And Duane, obviously, people are kind of intrigued now too with what they've teased for hype. So yeah, we can kick things off with Hyoh. I know you and I both had some fun fan interactions this week trying to kind of like justify some of our ratings or perspectives on things. What do you think about Hyoh so far? Just impressions, what we know, testing, anything like that?
So, I mean, I have to say, like, my main impressions on him thus far have really been in Arena because I haven't seen him in Guild War. Very few people in my guilds pulled him, or if they did, he's just there. He's still kind of a work in progress. I've seen him a little bit in free match, a little bit, but again, it's he's kind of paired with Sorrow and King Mont, so it's kind of a going for a little bit of a bruiser team, which he can put out some damage. That's never been in question. It's got a huge attack value. I think both of us we approach the reviews in a similar way. We're very fact based. We look at the numbers, we look at the abilities, and kind of give our impressions based almost purely on that. In this case, I don't think you can really argue where he stands in terms of his accuracy, and especially in some of the other caveats we pointed out in terms of like AP management. It's a little bit unfortunate in his timing of his release. Obviously a lot of people are focused on accuracy right now just because Yuffie is in the game and we have a new bar for what evade units can do in the game. So, accuracy is more under the microscope, I think, than it has been pretty much since Elena and Locke and company were running around. They have obviously had fallen off for a little while, and we kind of were finally away from that evade meta for a few months, and here it is coming back again. So yeah, accuracy is important. When you talk about obviously building the units, can he hit an evade unit? He can. You can build him that way for sure. Fire has good cards for that now after not having them for some time. But it's more at what cost is the question, and what other sacrifices do you have to make? And like we said, AP management and the other problems he has, how do you sort of square everything together? So
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's kind of the same. I know when we do unit reviews, and it's funny, like I gave him a B minus. For most people, that might as well be like an F, because I don't really give any B minuses, right? But realistically, B minus is a good thing. Like that's still a really good grade on a spectrum of A to F, and he's still a very good unit. The thing when we talk about like him compared and relative to other units is just that there's more deficiencies. And so one of them, as you talked about, is accuracy. Another one is AP management. Another one is agility. The thing with those is it's not that they're bad, it's that they have special consideration that not all other characters do. He could be fine on a very long map that's 14 squares long and you can get 3 buffs, and AP management's probably not an issue. But then you get a map like this one where you get one turn and all of a sudden you have a different character that you can't really use him the same, but not all characters have that deficiency. Same thing with the accuracy. A lot of characters aren't innately inaccurate, but there are ways that you can get them there for cheaper, whether that's easier passive abilities or buffs or who knows what. And he's got a buff for the accuracy, but it's like the third priority, and it's dispellable, and it's conditional, and there's a whole lot of things you have to do. And so I think that's really the best way to approach it, is just that he has more deficiencies to overcome. And when he overcomes them, he's a great unit, but not all characters start off that way. And I know movement's another big one too, where characters have that movement flexibility. Quite often you see maps where you need that jump of 2 to like go to your teammate, or you need that jump of whatever it is, that extra move 1 to mess with the range of what your enemy expects, and characters that are more vanilla in that regard.
So you don't double buff or something.
Yeah. So there's a lot of trickle down effects, and he is still a very good unit. I have no doubt he's going to eventually come into the game. That was a big section I put in mine where I'm like, I think he's a longer term unit given what his vision card synergy is, given where fire is going to probably eventually go to. It's not always going to be fire evade as we get more 140s, because that, Sorrow is going to decrease relative to that because he does not have a 140. But yeah, I'm glad they introduced him. Anyways,
personally, when I was looking at him too, I was very much thinking about what's coming after him. Obviously we have that lens into the future of what's coming in JP. There are a small handful of very strong slash units that are coming, also 100 costs. So the same potential 42k price tag. So that's the thought of those units and that cost was weighing heavily on me when I was thinking about this unit. And okay, he's good, and I can see uses for him, and yeah, he can do this and he can do that. But at 42k, Wing Stern is coming in, and Reagan is coming in, and Bradley is coming in, and they don't have as much of accuracy and AP issues that Hyoh does. So I mean, I think you have to make those comparisons when you're looking at the units, especially when we do have that lens into the future.
Absolutely. And the other thing too is we always talk about these characters in like min-maxing situations, and quite frequently, not everyone plays the game to that level, and so there is a large majority of the player base who are going to use Hyoh to amazing success. But that still doesn't change the like objective facts, if you will. It just means that the level of your enemy's competition may not be as min-maxing with their evade or as smart with their toggles of what they have on and off for abilities. But I hope people get success. I obviously don't want to see any bad units come into the game. That being said, I have seen some relatively smart builds for him from the area resist potential, at least, where, he's got that innate, I think it's 15 AoE resistance per the Dream. I know he can also equip the heavy armor, so Brigandine gives him another 10. I know that he can also, via the Chaos Ifrit or Dark Ifrit, that Vision card actually gives AoE resistance as well. I hadn't considered that. That's another one if you go main Vision card slot on him, you can get extra there. So there are some meme builds where you can build up that AoE resistance well, and that typically does scale or does fare pretty well in the game.
Yes, I mean, so he's a unit that definitely is going to prefer to have a tank, just so that somebody doesn't single him out and take him down pretty quickly. I mean, I have seen builds where he can get 80, 85 plus area resist, and that's where he's almost identical to Wingstern is coming. His kit is very, very similar in a lot of ways, almost kind of like a yin and a yang, where Wingstern also has a re-raise. He has a re-raise instead of an Immortal Spirit. It's an enhanced version that gives him accuracy and slash attack. Sounds pretty familiar when you think about Hyoh.
Yep.
But the thing about Wingstern is that on top of just having way, way better luck, he also has enhanced accuracy on all of his attacks. He gets 30 to hit. Yeah, it's just he's in another league of accuracy. So
right, totally. But those that are seeing a lot of Sephiroth, I know we talked about this. I actually think Hyoh does relatively well in that matchup where you really don't care about accuracy at all, and Sephiroth's best attacks are all AoE based. Obviously, there's some things to be said too with Hyoh in terms of just his defense pen and what he can do slash res pen wise to kind of mirror Sephiroth's damage output with his own penetration. So I also know that when you consider the AoE that Hyoh has as well, that reaction counter block rate of 100, kind of one of Sephiroth's big selling points, that there's, that matchup on a lot of paper, when you consider vast majority of the player base is going to see Sephiroth for a long time, that means that Hyoh was probably going to be a good pick for them for a relatively long time too. So yeah, definitely subjective from that perspective on where you are.
Yeah, I think that reaction cancel attack is going to age pretty well for him too, because there are a lot of new characters that are going to be coming in with, similar to Sephiroth, have very, very nice counter abilities. So that attack is going to have really nice utility from here on out.
Yep, and the healing power down, I don't underrate either. That's still one of my favorite mechanics in the game, where Sephiroth has a notoriously enormous health pool. If you can find a way to heal him and pocket him, you basically, not that you can't kill him, but it's like a raid boss. It takes forever, but all of a sudden throw a healing power down in there and the whole strategy is out the window. So good. All right. Well, I think that's probably all we could talk about for Hyoh. We could probably talk about him forever, to be honest. I know there's more that we could go over, but we'll kind of segue to Duane here, who we've slowly been hyping up. For those of you that have been watching the podcast, I think we've had some secret high hopes we've woven in here. I know Duane obviously had his time in the sun, but he's coming back here. MA2, Transcendence, a brand new Vision card, which we will talk about. I probably should talk about first, and then we can talk about, let's say, expectations for Duane, if you will. So again, per usual, JB, the MVP, with this amazing visual for what the applications are of this Vision card. You want to talk through the metrics on it?
Yeah, so I mean, this is just a placeholder. I kind of snapped the picture there from the news, and the stats are all kind of placeholders right now. Obviously, we don't know the base stats yet. All we know on the bestowed is that it's going to give defense. Since that's the only thing that they highlighted for bestowed, I'm thinking that's going to be pretty substantial, maybe something like 15, maybe even 20 defense, which would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
The party effects, I think we can pretty much bank on them looking something like this. The 30 human killer, I think, has been pretty standard for these job cards. And then the secondary effect should be something like 16 or 20 crit evasion. And then the area resist being the level 99 ability, that should be 20 area resist.
Yep.
So very, very nice party effects there.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, Duane in particular, too, I know he's going with that niche of, seems like a very strong physical tank, having that slight magic weakness, which is fine. Every character needs its whole, and he's not a new unit, so you probably should find some weakness to kind of age him with the rest of the game, if you will. But I love the area resist on a card like this. That's one of those ones you look for in making any party. And the one thing that really made my eyes bug out, though, because this is the big thing we talked about with Dark, is the fact that it has Katana on this card. One of the big things for Sephiroth in his window of usage was that you run into some limitations quickly with what you can do for team building potential. And Duane has some obviously immense synergies with the hero vision card that is Sephiroth's vision card as well. They now overlap on two of them, and Duane fills that role. Now, obviously a little one-dimensional again, because you're talking about a heavy physical or anti-physical team. They both have a slight magic weakness. I put that in quotation marks. But yeah, exceptional card. And obviously there's other dark units on in here too. Dark Fina and Lemure, primarily would be gangbusters in a party of 3.
Yeah, so the units here, I have them, all the way up through JP's timeline. So obviously there's a couple of new ice units that we don't have yet there in Reagan and Howlett. So it looks like it could be a pretty cool ice card into the future as well.
Definitely.
Or potentially, pairing ice with dark, or pairing it with light, or water, or whatever.
Yep.
Astrius obviously is the main katana user there for water. There is an interesting new MR as well, Dia, who we kind of touched on a couple weeks back too.
Yes.
So maybe for some low cost stuff.
Yep.
So obviously Miranda there was the 70 cost light unit. Her water version as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously Light has the most units here. Obviously Sylvie and Elena, they're our global Fest units, and Lucio. So definitely could be good.
I was intrigued by Sylvie being on here because her own vision card is also the area resist. Not that you would stack them together, but I thought that was intriguing that they gave her 2 different options of area resist cards to kind of slot her in for that potential rainbow party, which I think she does relatively well in, because she's really just got one job. It's like do the limit break, re-raise in full life, and do some chip damage here and there. She does a lot of damage. I shouldn't say chip damage, but it's but yeah, overall I think there's some strong units on here. I love seeing these cards because it allows for that opportunity to kind of brainstorm the merging of other elements together that may not normally get to coexist. So the fact that we get another global exclusive that can do that, very, very excited for that.
I think one other thing on this card is we do know that Dark Bahamut is coming very, very soon.
Oh.
And Dark Bahamut is also area resist.
Yes.
And so there is a little bit of overlap here with this card. Obviously there's a lot of light units here. Wing Stern is not on this one though. But I will say though that if you were maybe happy with Sephiroth and Duane and Fina, in that particular trio, or maybe some of the other units on this card, it could be maybe a cheaper way to maybe get around getting Dark Bahamut and use this card. So
that's a great point. Yeah, economic wise, I agree. And I've slowly started to appreciate more and more these area and unit res cards in the sub slot don't give you a ton of resistance. They get neutered pretty hard. I think it's cut down from like 20 to 6 if I'm thinking off the top of my head. But I've actually come around more and more to realizing how important sometimes that 6% resistance is. And I think specifically of like characters like Sephiroth, who primarily deal in that AoE damage. I've even thought of characters like Skahal, who obviously is primarily AoE damage, that if you can get even that 6% extra unmitigated resistance, that if you're talking about Dark Bahamut on the main vision card and you throw this in a sub vision card, you likely will still obviously allow Duane to retain that ability, which we didn't even talk about yet. This card has a special ability on it. It's called Absolute Terror. It is a 4 range cross shape attack that removes courage, deals large damage. So yeah, throw this on the sub slot. You still retain the ability to use that. Overall, excellent chess piece, I think, for what you could potentially add.
So that ability is Duane only.
Yes,
but huge for him. Right. I mean, he obviously he already can remove re-raise. He's always had great utility in his kit. He didn't have anything for courage, and in terms of the dark elements, they don't have a ton of units who can really deal with re-raise and courage outside of Sephiroth and his LB. So definitely another boon, I'd say, for the elements overall.
And I know practically speaking, a lot of people associate courage with evade units, and Duane is not an accurate unit. So there is something to be said that's like, okay, there's some like limited upside there because you're not going to be willy-nilly hitting your evade units or moving it. But that being said, there is courage on characters that aren't evade units, and so dare I say you get into that. He's power crept at this point. He's not really, but Snow or like Dark or actual Dark Leela, who's got that courage mechanic, like those non-evade units that have courage, obviously very helpful for certain. Against Hyoh, who's got the courage buff, bam, gone.
And I think if I read it right on the skill description, it does remove courage before the damage. Even if he misses, he can get value out of it.
Wait, that remove courage still works even if you miss? I did not know that.
Yeah. So if the effects, if it says then deals damage, then it will be.
I thought for some reason I thought courage and re-raise removal was exempt from that. I knew that it would do the other things, but never mind. It changes everything from what I just said. That is very good against evasion units. Exceptionally good still, because you don't need him. You can allow Sephiroth to finish off that unit instead. I'm sorry. I thought that was unique in what it removed. Okay, well, good. Bigger upside, more reason to be excited.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. And then anything else you want to talk about with Duane?
I think in terms of Duane, now that I see like that he's getting that he's getting hooked up on that vision card, I feel like this is going to be Gumi's touch here, like in terms of maybe fixing up a subpar MA2. So I almost envision them kind of giving the MA2 as it is in JP, and then he's going to get hooked up with the 140, like maybe he'll get some good upgrades there. The one thing that I hope that he doesn't get is I hope he doesn't get a 100% hit,
I agree.
because I think that it's going to make him too good.
I agree.
Personally.
Totally agreed.
So.
Well, because Sephiroth already has it. I know that Dark Fina technically has an ability that has the extra hit rate on it. Their agility card, the Black Rose Lane of Vision card, has the accuracy on it, which is the most popular vision card you use on that team. There's other ways for Dark units to still hit those evade units, and Duane does so many good things utility-wise that I agree giving that to him, unless it was just like a bare bones 100% hit chance with no utility. I would hope they get a little more creative, whether it's hate generation. That would actually be my preference, where right now he gets 5 hate and that's it. And once he gets hit 3 times, you're done. So if they could add a dream ability that either A, does what Snow does and gives them like a much higher starting hate and go up to like 10 or 12, and then you have to hit them 5-6 times and then that's it forever. Or you go like, let's say the Whisper route and you give the extra hate generation on that ability instead. I think both of those would be my preference, or one of those.
So I know like with the dream upgrades, a lot of times they look at the Job 25 ability, and
right.
90% of the cases that's the ability that gets upgraded. His is that the one that lowers the slash resistance of the opponents. It's his Armor Crusher ability. So it's like a range 4 single target, decreased slash res 25. Yeah, it's another offensive ability. Maybe they add some more utility onto that. Personally, I agree with you. I hope that they look at maybe either upgrading a passive, or they look at upgrading his self buff there, the Dark Mantle. That one obviously is super unfortunate that it it lowers his light resistance when he uses it, so just makes him like a free kill for light at that point. Yeah, they could look at upgrading Swift Shadow or something with the hate, like you said, or that one. I would be happy with either one.
Yeah, same. Either way, it's nice to throw that unit in the mix, and particularly because I think we've seen that Dark isn't unbeatable. There are light teams that can do exceptionally well against it. Just got to game plan properly. So I'm not scared of like a Dark meta that we can't overcome. I still think there's counterplay. So I'm just excited from the fact that you can do something different and obviously maybe diverge from where JP went for a while there.
The thing with Duane, though, that like a lot of times we've been able to overcome strong Dark units by stacking that Dark resistance. He does have that like spammable 38% Dark Imperil.
Yep.
So that's definitely is going to make it a little bit tougher for the Walls and Lucio's.
Yeah. Exceptionally good for Sephiroth, because Sephiroth does not deal with imperils either. Sephiroth is more about the penetration. He obviously has the defense imperil on that one, the single hit ability, but having someone else imperil for him, I know I've seen that with like Shadow Lynx with her limit break, and obviously like Dark Fina, which she has her unit resistance down, but having Duane with the Dark res down is going to be substantial for Sephiroth.
No doubt.
All right, and then on to the next topic. We are getting another batch of global transcendences. Right now, we're looking at Venera, who we mentioned, Lucia, Queen Mashri, the regular, the water version of Glaciella, Luartha, Dario, Ravies, and Valade. I think that's the exhaustive list there. Anyone there catch your eye by any chance?
I do like Queen Mashri, not necessarily because I think it's like an amazing upgrade. It's more that, she is a modern, like she's a good unit, and that's going to obviously give her more stats and kind of help her out a little bit. So that is one I'll probably awaken. After that, I'm probably looking at one of the MR units. I do like Dario. I've always liked him. For cost limited tanking. So I think I actually haven't awoken any MR unit yet. I didn't go for Mont or Lynx or any of those. So
yep.
I think I'm gonna Dario will probably be my first one, and maybe Ravies. I don't know. We'll see.
No, Dario's an exceptional choice. I did Mont Awakening, and I did it purely for the stream with Justin and friends. But Dario is one that I have been looking for. I actually am very excited about the MR and SR Transcendences because they, how can I say this, disproportionately benefit compared to the URs, where I think generally speaking, MR and SR units don't have as strong of stats as the UR units, but the reincarnation stats are the same regardless of your rarity. So for Dario to suddenly get the same 3300 HP that the UR units get, we've seen little Leela obviously benefit from that as well. I think that's great from an MR and SR value perspective. I don't think it's going to affect, most gameplay, but the cost limited gameplay, absolutely. And he is, one of the better wind ones from a tank perspective.
Well, the other thing with MR and SR is, the shops, the MOG shops just refreshed a couple of days ago, and there was quite a number of scrolls available in there for MOG medals. And those MR and SR medals, I've been looking for years at this point for something to spend those on.
Absolutely.
So I cleaned those scrolls out as soon as I saw them.
Yep, me too.
So yeah, that's I think even for free to play folks, I'm sure if you're a day one player or you're a veteran in this game, you have a ton of those medals too. So I'm sure that everybody's eyes lit up, and that's going to be over the months, that's going to give people options to play around with some of those MR and SRs and awaken them and get some good value out of there and cost limited. So that's I think has been a good development.
Most definitely. Well, good. All right. Well, that concludes essentially what we wanted to talk about for the War Room. We are transitioning now to the Leonis Spy Report, where we look at some of what was released on the JP side of things. Most noteworthy, they got a new vision card and Esper, and it sounds like I think it's called Great Demon, essentially. It's kind of generic in how they've named it. This does, at first glance, seem like an exceptionally great Esper and vision card for Raph, who just came out. The vision card, the Esper itself, we'll talk first, I know is, again, kind of like what we've seen for a lot of these tankier Espers, very slow on the agility, only 13 overall. But when you talk about the board nodes, that's really the strongest thing you can do for a tank, is just have well-rounded stats. And so this Esper does get 5 AoE resistance because of the cost of it, if you will. There's no, or maybe the cost is irrelevant, but there's no light negative on it at all. So it does have light resistance, which gives it a positive light res for that dark unit, which I obviously like to see. It also has strike resistance, which at this point in JP is a very popular attack type. So getting that Esper to have it, and then you can kind of pick and choose between dark attack or defense or crit evasion. Obviously this is primarily made for Raph. I don't know if I see a ton of benefit outside of that, other than maybe some of the light resistance and strike resistance, but overall the Esper I think is a very good addition for that dark cast. They haven't had other than Anima, had an Esper in a while, and this was, I think, a nice diversion from what else is available. I don't know if you had any other thoughts on the Esper in particular.
No, I mean in terms of tanking, like the board is stacked. Like you have AoE resistance on there, you have HP of 5%. You can, and then you can kind of pick and choose. Like, do you want to go all in for the crit evasion, or do you want strike res or defense? And then you could even like mix in some offense there too. So it's definitely like a pretty stacked Esper when it comes to tanking capability.
Definitely.
And just another dark option for stacking up light resistance. So seems like they're kind of putting all their ducks in a row to prep us for some broken light unit to come in the future.
Seems like it. It's inevitable, right? They're just cyclical. We know two things, like death, taxes, and light's going to be good eventually. That's and obviously it comes with a corresponding vision card. It is a magic oriented vision card. Again, kind of pairs perfectly for putting on Raph. It is one of the metrics that you like to see on the party buffs. It's agility 15%, and as we were just talking about, it's also 16% strike resistance, so kind of hedging what we're seeing in JP for their meta and strengths. There is that 24 slash res on it as well, and to the unit you get some magic and 10% AoE resistance, 3 agility. So up and down, like obviously very strong for that niche, if you will. I know if you look outside of that in terms of which characters can use it, actually filtering on WOTV Calc just on some of the UR units that are eligible here, I will go through these individually by elements. And I know my first impression of it was there's actually not a lot of elements where there is like 2 characters that I think go well. I know for a lot of these vision cards, you try to lump 2 characters together of the same element. There's very few of these where you can just go complete rainbow. But yeah, going through these individually, if you go fire, Regal Glacial and Summer Ketone, and again, if you recall what it is, it's agility, strike, and slash resistance. Good, they're not really amazing characters though. Ice has Rafal, Lasso Mdina, kind of the same idea, lackluster character overall. At least Wind, I would say like 2 or 3 here between Risal, Sadali, and Ayaka in terms of who I see used more prevalently. Halloween Leela obviously is still one of the goats of characters. You just maybe a little more hit or miss recently. And kind of just keep going down here for everybody. The Earth units, it's only Queen Majri, so again, very limited for that. Just by yourself. Lightning wise, only Skahal. So again, talking about elements that kind of all by themselves, but that's where you can maybe merge your elements. Water, I think a couple noteworthy units here. Astrius obviously comes to mind, but I know people have had some hopeful upside for Aerith, and Eldyra I think is still a viable water unit by and large as well. And then you finally get to Light, which, there's actually some decent names on here. Locke, Valentine Miranda, I know it's kind of a splash in the pan for JP, but obviously does seem to still be a quality unit, so look forward to that. I personally am Team Mashiri. I've really enjoyed using her, and Sakura too obviously does have her strength. But then you finally get to Dark, and it's like, all right, this is basically like a Dark Vision card. It's Wrath, it's Sephiroth, the Dark Phoenix, Leela Bull, Joker, Lemray, Venera. Like, bam, this is a Dark Element Vision card. I'll call it what it is, but yeah, very good for them.
Obviously, so there's a little bit of overlap here with the new card we were just talking about, the Duane card. Obviously, it doesn't have the sword group on here, but it does have the other two with Katana and then Black Mage group.
Yep.
So could be some interesting combinations you could put together. Unfortunately, Raph is not on the Duane card, so you kind of lose out on the tank there. But
right. Be a lot worse.
Yeah, otherwise great. I mean, Leela, I think she doesn't have her dream yet in JP. Like, she got her MA2, but she's still waiting on her dream. I wonder if that's going to be kind of following here close behind on the card.
I would think so. I know Black Rosalena was one of the other dark units that I think just got her upgrade as well.
She did, yeah. I think that was kind of one of our next topics, right? The new Transcendences.
It was, yeah. So on that note, Black Rosalena is one of them. Farm is another. El Sorel, Eliza, and there are some other non-UR units. I briefly looked at a couple of them. Eliza, I know, is kind of like, okay, thumbs up, I like that. But Black Rosalena was okay, almost like too redundant. I don't know if we want to spend a ton of time looking at what they are, though.
I think we can just sort of quickly. So like Black Rose, like she got some cast time reduction. She can basically instant cast her spells like with her self buff, or if you like stack Valifor and like a Trust Stone.
Yep.
So that's pretty cool. She got a little bit more speed, and then basically if her health I think is above an 80% threshold, she'll have 40 additional area resist on her passive. So that is so that's really good for her. Like obviously that's going to pair like super well with Raph. Like any character that's like stacking area resistance, they're going to excel a lot better if they have somebody else taking the hate off of them. And Black Rose hasn't really had that since Duane was in his prime, so I think that's going to help her out quite a bit. She's still like super lacking when it comes to like her penetrations, but she's she can't have everything.
No, but she does still have the strong imperils here between the 30 spirit imperil.
She does, yeah.
And then her limit break, where obviously that's like just easy ways to cleave through that kind of stuff. And and I guess going briefly over it, I know Farms was little slash attack and some extra penetration, again just kind of some power creep there for what the game brings. And then her ability upgrade, so it's essentially a 60% magical evasion for 3 turns to start and ignores sure hit for 3 turns to start. So this is a very good upgrade to this buff. I just know this character has some limitations and some AI problems, no matter how good of a buff this is.
Yeah, so I know people have been, I've heard some people talking about, this Shunak also gets the sure hit nullification in his Transcendence that I think we should be seeing pretty soon.
Yep.
But now Farm is going to have it as well, and people have been kind of talking about, is the water evade meta, going to be there in the future? Personally, I don't quite see it, because both Shunak and Farm, they don't have like the failsafe, like they don't have like a re-raise or immortal to fall back on.
Right.
They don't have like the 100% barrier like Yuffie has, and they're not quite as evasive as her either. Farm I think can get relatively close, but Shunak is definitely not quite there. Water, they do have like 2 35% luck cards, so that that can definitely push him up and help him out in that area. But I don't know. Farm, I think she's just super limited in her damage. She's never been like a big damage dealer. Like a lot of her attacks are single target based, so I think that's kind of an uphill battle for her. Chunak I think could be maybe a bit more interesting. His damage is a bit more substantial.
I would agree. Yeah, well, and I've always liked his job. I've just never been able to make it work. But yeah, his duelist job, it does have like an evasion buff on it. I think he does have a barrier himself as well, or I'm misremembering. It's the single target resistance in the defense and spirit. So either way, I'm with you. I don't think it's going to be strong, but it'll be there.
It'll be able to do something against the fire evade units anyway.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest. That's probably the biggest upside, is being able to mirror fire in that luck versus luck matchup. And then I know, quickly just going through some of these other ones here, Eliza's getting the missile attack res pen, which, good lord, they already have a lot of that. I'm actually kind of surprised by that one. And reaction block rate 50, which is honestly I think fine. I like that. You can add a Trust Stone passive, bump that up to 70, and they are upgrading it so that her passive here is getting a decreased AP consumption of 20, which good. I mean, I don't know if it's great, but good. She's a good unit, so these are good buffs.
Yeah, I think it's nothing crazy here, but like you said, she's already great. So
and then El Sorel, I don't know, we spent too much time on her, but she's just getting, again, kind of some power creep to things here too. HP 20% slash res pen. and then they're updating her.
I think the most interesting thing is that her job 25 it becomes like a multi-select. So
Right.
that's kind of cool.
That's actually a good
Uh,
change. I just don't know if she's good enough to warrant using it.
It is a defense break of 32. Like it's a really nice skill. The 80 cost units are kind of fall into like, the cost restricted type play at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many 100 cost units and 90 cost units at this point, and 80 cost just isn't really going to be able to compete.
Oh, the Fan Fest. We'll talk about this. That's the physical meetup, right?
Yeah, so this one they threw out
Oh.
in that the FFBE live stream yesterday or the day before.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's really kind of like last minute. Like obviously we haven't heard about anything like from on the WOTV side. We just kind of heard through the grapevine of FFBE that apparently they're going to have like a 2-day fan festa. One day I think is going to be dedicated to Brave Exvius. One day is going to be dedicated to War of the Visions. And apparently it's in Los Angeles at the end of June. So cool. I hope
Yeah.
we kind of hear some promotion of it within our side of the game. I'm kind of interested in maybe checking it out if I can make it work.
Yeah, honestly, that would be a trip that I would entertain. I have not been to California before. I've been as far as
Oh.
Vegas, but good reason to go there, and I'm sure I could probably convince the girlfriend to make the trip too. So shoot, maybe we'll do a live stream from FanFest in in June.
That would be cool.
That actually would be cool. All right, book it. So everyone, don't get your
We'll
hopes
see you
up.
there.
Yeah. Well, good. So that does technically lead us to our fourth section here, the Leonis Town Square Q&A. We actually got an influx of questions, so big thank you. And honestly, these are very good questions. So happy to talk through these right now.
Keep them coming.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll go through the first one here. And again, some of these are multi-segmented, but essentially the first one here is, how are you feeling about job-based vision cards now that you have a better idea of their power and their rollout pace, this and that? And there's a second part to this, but we'll address that one first. So JB, what's your initial thoughts on that part of it?
So at this point, we're roughly like 6 months into it, right? I think we started getting them maybe towards the end of last, maybe even like 7 months into it. We've got maybe I don't know, 15-ish cards at this. We just got 2 new ones. If we count with the Duane one coming in tomorrow, the Hyoh one. So we've gotten now several global exclusive cards, which has kind of sped up the ramp up a bit. And that has been one of my kind of concerns with it. Is it's a very slow rollout. We're very slow to kind of feel the impact of it. So a lot of people are kind of just like, do I pull for this, or they kind of aren't sure. And if you're not kind of in that position where you can pull everything, I think that it does make it a little bit difficult to kind of buy into this system. And I can totally see why. You're a free to play or a low spender. You got to kind of pick your battles. But I personally, as a spender in the game, I enjoy it because there is starting to be new windows of opportunity with kind of mixing together the different elements. And personally, I feel like we've been kind of stuck in this mono element thing for more than 2 years at this point, pretty much since first anniversary. I'm very eager to kind of want this to roll out even quicker than it is, to be honest with you. I wish that Gumi would give us more of these cards as handouts to kind of speed it up. But yeah, how are you feeling?
No, same. I'm slightly underwhelmed only because, to your point, I haven't seen it make an effect fast enough yet. I feel like the mono element was felt a little sooner than this. I love the concept of it, quite honestly. I love the fact that you can branch outside of your element now, create new synergies. You can allow unique interactions to actually function properly and still retain some value from the vision cards. But yeah, I just haven't seen the fruition yet, at least at the top end of the game, to say we're mixing, matching these elements like we hoped. It's far more the dual element Espers and vision cards, or I'm sorry, the dual element vision cards that are enabling that, not the job-based vision cards. So it's the job-based vision cards are a very small part of that shift. That being said, obviously it's going to continue to come out. There's going to be new synergies, and I'm looking forward to them. But I agree, it's from a spend perspective very difficult to buy in. And yeah, I'm definitely underwhelmed, but I'm appreciative and still excited and constantly using where I can.
Yeah, so obviously I think a lot of people at this point have heard about this sort of Fist Exodia comp, essentially, that's going to be culminating at Full Metal Alchemist here relatively soon. But the final 2 cards to make a set of 6 job cards for the Fist strike teams is going to be coming out then, and that's cool. That's going to be sort of our first foray into like a full-fledged, full set of 6 cards that you can set up with these Fist teams.
Yep.
And obviously, it from everything I've seen and heard in JP, it is and was pretty powerful.
Yes.
I think that you can see, if you've been following the JP side, they've been releasing a ton of new units and vision cards specifically which counter strike damage, which to this point in the game we haven't seen that before. So I think it says a little bit something about those units and cards.
Absolutely. Yeah, well, and to your point, so that's a true rainbow team. It's literally 3 different elements. And so a lot of people rely on the crutch of that element versus element battle to like see results. And so yeah, that's why like my theory crafting brain loves this, because you can no longer leverage that part of the equation. Now, obviously there's still elemental things at play, but you can't just say, oh, it's a fire team, so I'll just throw water at it and hope that it lands because I know it's a popular meta. Like, that just doesn't work in practice.
So that's when you say that there, that is something that I've been longing for and have missed from that first year of the game, where it wasn't just such a, easy, okay, I'm just going to throw X element at this team and it's going to win 90% of cases. You had to think about things differently. You had to look at damage types and resistances, and I thought that was a little bit more nuanced, a little bit more interesting. Yeah, totally. Like I said, that's one of the reasons why I'm wanting to kind of dive into this quicker.
Me too. So. And not to belabor the point, but like right now more than ever, all the characters we're seeing, they all have very unique abilities and buffs because there's so many unique main jobs. Whereas even in that first year of the game, there were a lot of vanilla jobs. So even if you were combining your multi-elements, the chess matchup was pretty straightforward because you only had like 10 jobs or whatever it is to pick from. But now, with all these very unique buffs that people can give to each other, I want to see more of that interaction across the elements that you just haven't seen in the last year and a half. And then I know the follow-up here was talking about like which other types. I think in terms of other types that see success, I know Glove is a big one that comes to the forefront. I personally think Global's going to see a Dagger one because we have some Dagger cards that JP doesn't have. And I think the same thing for Pierce eventually, where we have some extra Pierce cards. But I think that's really it. I don't know if there's a whole bunch of others.
Well, one thing with the card that we just looked at and with Raph coming into the game, I think that Mace could see some play. I don't know.
Mace, thank you.
I mean, there is I think up to 7 cards now, I want to say, for the Mace group. Yep. And now Mace has a dedicated tank in Raph.
Yep.
Which is one of the reasons why the fist comps work, is because within the strike, weapon group, they have Alphonse, who's a gangbusters tank. The Mace group now has that. I think that's going to be some of the tough things for some of these other weapon groups. If you want to stay purely within that group, like Gloves, like you mentioned, they're going to need to go outside of that group to pull in a tank somewhere. If you're looking at autoplay, Glove users aren't usually bruisey enough that they could kind of get thrown out there without a tank. So those are the things that you need to consider with these different weapon groups. Can they run, independently without, with the sort of units that they have within them?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, cool. So we'll transition to some of these other questions here. The second one is, who's your favorite unit and how would you improve or fix that unit? Do you have anyone that comes to mind?
That's a tough one. My favorite unit, I would probably say, is probably King Mont. Not even because I really love him all that much from the story. I think it was just because I had so much fun with like his berserk bombs, like back in the day.
I still do.
Yeah, it's still great.
It's still very strong. Yeah.
And even in like manual play, like he's so good for those berserk bombs that, yeah, I just had a ton of fun with him. How I would fix him, like, I think he's great now, like now that he's got his 140, now that fire has really been built up so much. The one thing that I do wish that he had would be, I don't know, maybe just a little bit better, like counter, like something that maybe could, be a bit more impactful.
I get behind that.
I think he kind of just has just like kind of a basic sword guard kind of thing right now, so.
I'm sorry. For those of you watching the stream, I just overrode JB's face with a window. I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
I was brainstorming ahead because I'm second guessing my choices now. Because I agree, this is a tough one because my favorite characters don't really need to be improved. In no particular order, but they're definitely top 3 would be Jaden, Sadali, and Whisper. I don't necessarily have a favorite. Whisper's, I'm beating a dead horse here, probably the one that I'd improve, but I don't have strong balanced opinions on how you could achieve that. But no, I outside of that, I won't really suggest any balance changes. I know I've secretly been like a Renan stan this whole time, and I think the one change I'd make to his AI is that right now he uses barrier first always, no matter what, and uses barrier and moves forward. And so it really neuters his ability to heal secondly in fights on those follow-ups, because he will always barrier before healing a teammate. And then number 2, even from a spacing perspective, when you talk about like range and how many buffs you can use, I actually don't like his Spirit up and Missile up buff. I think it's like limited, it's okay, but I don't love it. So to be more flexible with like some of the sub-job buffs or TMR buff, so that if he uses barrier and stayed still, you'd have a better chance of getting another one off. But that's really it. If he could do that though, he'd be broken. So it's a decent enough trade-off. That's probably the best one I can reach for, though.
You going to transcend him when he's available?
Probably. I actually have high hopes. I still think on paper he's like one of the best characters in the game. It's just like Hyoh, though. There's some statistical things and the AI ones that I just mentioned. It's really the AI that's the primary. But there are some statistical things from an agility perspective, from the accuracy perspective, where it's like you really have to like invest a lot of resources to make that work. But on paper, he looks amazing. All right. Okay, so we'll move to the next one here. So using only regular jobs, so none of these high and mighty 100 cost jobs. What do you think is the perfect job combination? I'll leave it at that. There's some extra here, but I think that's probably just a good overall question. That's a tough one, to be honest.
I think that we've seen the perfect job combination in Flag Bearer Glaciella.
That's
I mean, at least from what's out there right now, and just kind of, I'm sure like if you kind of went through everything, you could kind of pick something individually better. But in terms of like units we've seen, her jobs definitely have served her well.
Definitely. Yeah, I don't think I have a strong preference. If I had to guess in my gut, it would probably be operative as one, and then like literally anything else as the other one. I think operative is like one of the best jobs in the game, just because you have that like random evasion buff, and not random, but like you can suddenly make an evasion team that wouldn't be there because you can give someone 25 evasion, and then they typically have that barrier buff as well, so that if you have a character that doesn't have access to a barrier naturally, like you have an option all of a sudden. But yeah, combining that with something else, I think is particularly strong.
I know that in terms of like the newer generation jobs, Trick Lancer is we talked a little bit about it earlier. That's I think one of the best ones.
I would agree.
There's just so many jobs when you kind of think about all the unique ones too, and
Yeah.
yeah, I think that I'll have to think about this offline and maybe come up with a better answer for next week. So maybe that can be my homework.
Totally. Same. Same. All right. So we have two questions left here. So this next one is do you see job vision cards and Transcendence changing the way walls are made? So kind of talking about, I was saying a second ago, particularly with Transcendence, unless the entire guild coordinates where scrolls go, probably changes which elements are stronger to the player base. I know we obviously do a ton of that here, VIP being, ranked 1 or 2 right now at the moment. But yeah, JB, any thoughts immediately for you, or I can talk to that at length?
So Job VCs, I think we kind of covered that already. I think we haven't really seen a ton of it yet. It's been, like you said, more kind of facilitated by the dual espers, and I think that's going to continue to be the case at least until the strike kind of meta, or if any semblance of that actually shows up in our side of the game. In terms of like Transcendence, I think first I would say that there's Transcendence and then there's Reincarnation. I kind of view them separately.
And they are.
Transcendence, we're already seeing the effects of it, everywhere in the ladder. Sephiroth is everywhere. Their Yufis are out there. Everybody's awakening, their units. Jigumi has been, fairly generous with the antlers. So I think that awakening to 140 has been relatively accessible for everyone. So I think we're definitely seeing impacts there. Reincarnation, I think that's the spenders, right? At least at this point.
It's the tough one.
And even the spenders, you're picking and choosing your units. And, we've talked about it in the past weeks. I've reincarnated exactly one unit, and it's been Yuffie. I did like a couple on Sephiroth, but I didn't really go deep on him. The lower stuff, for limited, that's a kind of a separate thing. Those are fairly accessible to a lot of people, but the UR ones are the big tickets.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I would agree. So job vision cards, there's a couple that we bank on for sure. And that's like the agility area unit resist, no surprise there. As you mentioned, not a big influence. The Transcendence definitely is something that we implement automatically almost. Like if a character can do it and it's a character that we use frequently, it's considered part of the wall. We expect people to transcend them, and that has not been a barrier yet for really anybody that I can tell. But yes, the reincarnation there's so many things about it because you don't know what your enemies are doing for reincarnation. So it's tough unless someone has a database where you're tracking what every single player they've ever seen has for reincarnated units. You never really know exactly what they have reincarnated up to. So yeah, you're right. You could see a wall and two people on the same wall. One has reincarnated Seth, one doesn't. You might get two totally different results. I won't say it's necessarily changing the way walls are made because I think at the end of the day, it's still who has the best movement, who's got the most, the least weaknesses, who's overall got the best strategy, and like in terms of macro perspective, like does your first fight wipe out all the attackers' buffs and all their good abilities so that their second hit they can't clear you for 6? There's still some like really big picture things that I think are more important to the Guild War success from a top of the game perspective. But as we do get more scrolls, this is going to probably come more to the forefront where, yeah, if you look at an evade unit like Yuffie, you're getting like up to extra like 30% plus evasion on her if you fully max reincarnate, that, yeah, there's probably going to be some walls where you do lean into that. But again, you're now bringing up like who has the resources to do so. And metas shift so quickly, it's tough to really game plan and motivate people to all be on the same page. So, if anything, and I claimed this from the beginning, I think it just adds randomness into it. I don't think it actually adds an element of strategy to it. I think it's just too complex to game plan for and to coordinate 30 people. I just really think it's randomness. All of a sudden, you open a team that you think you should have won in your mocks, but you won in your mocks because your guildmate didn't have Bradley 140 and the other Earth units 140, but this person does, and all of a sudden, not the result you expected. So, yeah.
Personally, what I think is going to end up happening, and I mean, this is just me kind of speculating, is that it's going to be more of an age of like specialization where certain guilds are going to game plan and target, you know, specific units, and those are going to be the units that they decide to go all in for. And there's obviously, you know, unless you're spending thousands and thousands of dollars, which, you know, not everybody can really do, you know, you're only going to be able to pick out a couple of units here and there that you might be able to do that with. So,
Yep.
you know, certain guilds are probably going to be known for certain units, and that's probably going to be how it plays out.
Exactly. Well, and that's where the counterplay would come in. I know, speaking generally, there was a long time there where Runic Blades was primarily wind oriented, and they started to dabble into fire, knowing the eventual synergy there. And yeah, to your point, they specialized in that. They were like some of the best at it. That's how they actually surpassed us for number one for that brief period of time there last month. And even now, like, that's where, okay, if you know that your harshest competition specializes, let's say, in like fire or wind, that brings the question like, all right, well then do we specialize in water and what's the counter to it?
Ice.
Oh, ice, right? So like you bring up some of those counter things where it's a macro strategy, but then again, you have to ask the question, are water units and ice units worth the reincarnation? And the answer is usually no. So I don't know if it actually effectively changes anything. Yeah. Anyway, and then finally we got the fifth question here. What's your favorite character design in the game, artwork wise? And kind of the same question for vision cards.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I definitely, I mean, in terms of units, I would probably have to go with a more recent one. I really love Resol, who obviously she's brand new in the game. There's just something about like the silver hair, and I don't know, I really like her character. I love her design and aesthetic, and that was one of the reasons I pulled for her. So I think they've actually done a great job on all of the Warriors of the Crystal. I loved Perrine and Satya and Astrius and all the others too. So
I was going to ask you, do you have a special spot for Glaciella, considering the silver hair remark, or no? Is she a different?
I
category?
do. Yeah. Glassy or Flagbearer Glassy was my home screen unit until Resol came here. So
Nice. Good
yeah.
choice. I like normal, can't decide. I'm the most indecisive person on these things. Going through just a couple of them, surprisingly, I love Gilgamesh as a design. I still think the aesthetic of the wings is super cool. I think it looks kind of weird sometimes in the in-game model, but like just purely artwork wise, like this image, I love. I just think it's very, very cool. I know on that note too, Jaden, as I mentioned, favorite character. Part of my favoritism toward him is the aesthetic. I love the color scheme of like the black and the gold and like the orange and obviously like the giant machine guns. Also, Wingstern, the same reason I thought was such a cool intro in the like the opening AMV or whatever you call it, the opening movie that they've animated, that I thought it was such a cool look. And then the final one, surprisingly, is Cetia. I know I kind of like clowned on her in my review a little bit, but I actually, there's something about like the way her cloak billows, and obviously I love the gradient of colors that I think they knocked out of the park from an artwork perspective.
Yeah, she's great.
Yeah. And I know vision cards too. You had a couple favorites here too.
Yeah, so in terms of vision cards, the first one, it's not my favorite card, like in terms of, you know, how it looks, but Dreams of Heroism, this card always cracks me up. Just like the kind of Camilo perspective here with him, obviously like the damsel in distress Mashiri, which obviously is not the case. You know, Camilo looking so heroic, and then obviously awesome. The evil Mont. Such a good kind of alternate reality there, kind of in his head. So I'd like to see more cards kind of like this one with a little bit of a lighter edge to him.
Absolutely, yeah.
My absolute favorite card though, like in terms of looks and design, is the astrologer card.
Yes.
This one obviously, you know, Ramada. I hope someday we do see another version of Ramada. You know, obviously the two water versions of her aren't you know, the greatest units. The winter version and then the original. But you know, how about you? What are your favorite vision cards?
Actually, and I'm quickly going to second your sentiment there on seeing an updated version of her. I agree because I'm on the boat for Lilith. Same reason. Like I don't know how you can have two characters be like Mont's like 1 and 2 generals, and you look at like the rest of all the nations and who they're like 1-2 punches, and it, for like lore wise, it kills me that you have these two like A1 and A2, and they're like nothing characters in terms of strength in the game. I could rant on that forever. I actually think it's super interesting how like the strength of the lore of the characters in game doesn't match how strong they are in actual combat. So I like to see when characters actually get buffed to a point where like they feel as strong as they really should be, lore wise.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Lilith too. So yeah,
Yeah.
the Earth version, it just didn't really quite bring her to the forefront. So
No,
hopefully she
no.
gets a better version someday too.
No. And yeah, so I have three favorites that obviously can't decide between. The first one, I actually love the Elena artwork on this card. I think it's such a cool pose. I love the colors of it. Obviously, like just between like the hues of blue and whatnot. I think it's a super cool action card with everything flowing. Another favorite of mine, probably my favorite. I do love this culmination card. And again, the same idea. I think the imagery of Gilgamesh is super cool. And now that we know the backstory of the two of them, and obviously just like kind of like seeing the poses, I think adds a layer of like really just interest to it that I think most other cards don't get when you look at like what the artwork actually is. And then kind of the same thing here. Like I think this is still like one of the most badass poses. That same idea. Like if I love the aesthetic of the character, like I just think that's a like a really boss pose and just like sitting there hanging out in the chair. And I love the art of this for all the same reasons of the character. But yeah,
Yeah, I love how they kind of call back to that on the summer version card as well, where he's kind of almost kind
yes,
of in a similar pose in kind of like the beach chair, maybe just a bit more relaxed,
yeah, just pulling that up. Yeah, it's perfect. this
right?
is this is this is a goodie. It's a
This
goodie.
is kind of his vacation throne here.
Yep, that's perfect. So good. All right. Well, that wraps everything. It's obviously a nice long one for everybody. This is a lot to talk about, though, and a lot of still exciting things to look forward to here, where we have obviously some more collaborations and some shiny new characters to play with and see what shakes up, depending on map changes. Because at this point, it's a meme. Everyone asks me a question. My answer is, well, it depends on the map. So see what happens.
Yeah, it's
And
going to be fun with these with the global characters getting upgraded and kind of having our meta diverge from what we know of JP.
yeah.
So yeah,
And shoot, the global, we didn't talk about it this time because we talked about it last week, but the Dream and Transcendences of the global exclusive units. Like, I have no idea what that might do to shake things up, what Elena gets and what Zazan gets, what Freyevia gets. Like, who knows? Like, there's a lot of
yeah,
interesting things to look out for. So
yeah.
we'll talk.
Excited to wake up on Monday or Wednesday
Yeah,
to find out.
we'll talk about them next Monday at least. So that's it for now,
Exactly.
though. But yeah, per usual, thanks for watching, everybody. Always drop those questions. We love to answer them here. I think it's one of my favorite segments to honestly do. But that's it for now. JB, if you want to sign off.
Yeah, guys. Thanks again. I know this was a long one, but yeah, a lot to get through here, and yeah, enjoy the game this week, and yeah, looking forward to talking about the what's in store next time. So we'll see you guys then.
Sounds great. Have a good week, everybody. Take care.